Board regular meeting. Today is Thursday, June 1st, 2023. The time is 7 o'clock. Our mayor is at a conference in Columbus, Ohio, so Herb Porter, the deputy mayor, will be presiding over tonight's meeting. Village clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Trustee Prigi?
Here.
Trustee Husani?
Here.
Trustee Gutierrez? Here. Trustee Porter?
Here.
Trustee Kunkel?
Here.
And Trustee Bancole?
Here.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Here we go.
Okay. Like a motion for the acceptance of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded for the acceptance of the agenda. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Trustee Husani? Yes. Trustee Gutierrez? Yes. Trustee Porter?
Yes.
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
And Trustee Prigi?
Yes.
Item number 4, presentations. We have the Lake Street Corridor Study.
Yes, Mike is here to give us an update and to answer questions about the Lake Street
Perfect.
project that's been underway.
Greetings. Floor is yours, sir.
Technology. Thank you, trustees. It's a pleasure to be with you here tonight. I've been here before. It stuns me that it's been the better part of a year since we gave you the existing conditions presentation. I would just tell you that this has been a bit of an iterative process to get where we are, but I'm very pleased to show you that we have a pretty close to completed draft. It's an annotated draft, so it includes a lot of information. You have a summary memo in your materials. You also have the draft of the documentation of the overlay district. I'm go over it at cursory level, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them. I'll talk a little bit about the process and where we are. So, again, I'm Michael Blue. I'm with Tesco Associates, planning and design firm out of Evanston and Plainfield. We're joined in this project by our colleagues at Ansel Glink, municipal attorneys who weren't able to be here tonight. But together, we've been working on this project for a little bit of time already, and are glad to show you where we're at. So with that, I would love to give you a little bit of just reminder background of where we are and what we've been up to, and then go over the intent of an outline of the overlay district. So by way of review, you'll recall that the project relates to creating an overlay district for Lake Street that would be commonly used by Hanover Park, Bloomingdale, Roselle, and DuPage County, because a lot of the area in there is unincorporated. The project was initiated by the communities and the county through a grant through CMAP. The idea was to create some consistency of zoning, development potential, and enforcement, because enforcement has been an issue for all the communities along the area. And so the other option was to create some incentive for new development along there, something that was consistent, made it easier to deal with. In terms of what we found through not just the engagement process, but in terms of looking at the corridor, it was pretty clear that the objectives that the communities have are rather consistent, right? A nice corridor looks good, elimination of some undesirable uses, and then to create a consistency and a common communication for future development. The other thing that came out of the analysis, the more technical side of it, was that the area developed over a long time. A lot of it developed in the county. A lot of it was platted in the county, still is. And there's some development, let's call them challenges, that are created by long, narrow lots and some other kind of technical things that needed to be overcome. But that in general, the good thing, was that the communities and the counties were all on the same page moving forward. And that was really the most important part of this effort. So this is the land use map of the area. Again, the Hanover Park section at the left of the graphic here, the northwest corner, and then Bloomingdale Road all the way at the other end. And again, your position in this is a little bit different than the other communities because it's really just a very small part of the village that's here, but it was decided that you all will be part of it. So a lot of this area is not within the village. But one of the things that came out of the overall look was that the overall study was, the overall look, the overall character, the overall development presentation of the corridor affects all the communities in the county that are here. And the idea was to increase the character for everybody. The land use pattern that you see here is sort of eclectic, is the word that we've chosen. We pretty much have all the colors that we planners use on our land use maps in this corridor, about 1,000 miles, about 1,000 feet deep. So the idea was not to change the character all that much, but to improve it. And when there were redevelopment opportunities, that they were in keeping with what the idea was that I mentioned before. In order to try and simplify it, we kind of summed it up and sort of, well, there's these commercial areas and industrial area, and that top left corner there is really the area that's in Hanover Park. And then the others are a variety of residential and commercial areas. We had a community workshop.
Excuse me. What is, if you could go back to the previous slide, low intensity commercial? Could you just provide an example of what that is?
It's not so much the actual commercial that's low intensity, but it's kind of spotty, right? So there are parts of the corridor that have got rather consistent traditional commercial development, and then there are spots of it, and that's the low intensity point, where it's more individual lots than commercial centers. So the low intensity is not so much the type of use, but the amount of development that's there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for stopping me. And again, I'm going to run through kind of quickly to cover some ground, but if there's a question, please do stop me. I appreciate you doing that. We held a community workshop. It's also been a year or so ago. The idea here was to share with the community what's going on. Most of the folks who came out were either shop owners, business owners who wanted to know that their business could continue, and the intent is that they generally would. And there were a lot of residents from the Keeneyville area who were concerned that the idea was to inspire redevelopment of their neighborhoods and to incorporate their neighborhoods. They were very clear that they didn't want that. It has not been the intent of the study. It's a zoning effort, not an incorporation effort. We talked to a number of stakeholders with a couple of perspectives. One is that of the real estate market. The other is that of some of the residents. The folks we talked to in the real estate world said that in general, it's a good place to do business. It's a busy corridor. There's a lot of traffic running along it. There's existing retail for the most part on areas, whether it's the regular traditional or the low intensity, and that it's a good area because of all those factors. They also noted that, you know what, there's some less than attractive looking uses out there, right? There's car dealerships that are close to the property line, and these are things that historically happen, and you know this, you know the corridor very, very well, and that overall character would be great if it could redevelop over time, because it really did have an impact on whether or not businesses were interested in locating there. And so that kind of confirmed for us the intent that you all had with the study.
Was there any objection to the adult use businesses that are
There was
located there?
Sorry to interrupt. Yes, there was, and that was kind of a very common raised point. There was concern of it that it was not appropriate for the corridors, not appropriate for the communities that are here. I can tell you, in the time since we've been doing this, DuPage County has been addressing the issue, and through their courts and code enforcement is working to have the uses eliminated. From the resident perspective, not just the issue that the trustee mentioned, but also concern about impacts. Part of the problem out there is code enforcement. A lot of the area is in the county. A lot of the residents are confused, and I know from talking to your staff that you and all the other towns get calls from people saying, hey, you've got to fix this, and you check your map and the GIS or whatever it is, and you go, it's in the county, right? And so the ability to control some of these things was difficult. What we ended up doing in the draft of the ordinance was to be sure that the kinds of code standards that could enforce some of the issues that you see listed here, parking where it's not appropriate, businesses where they're not appropriate, could be addressed by any of the jurisdictions, but it would have to be the one that it was in. But we created a consistent level of enforcement. In terms of the approach to the overlay, and this is where a lot of the iterative discussion that I mentioned over the past year has come into play. And there ended up being these characteristics that we really emphasized as we went through. The first one was most definitely that of local control. And there was discussion when we started this about whether or not there might be some sort of joint plan commission that was represented by all the communities where everybody had a voice on the entire corridor, or whether or not there might be some veto authority. These were just questions to be asked. They were universally rejected by everybody, with good reason. You don't want to have other communities telling you yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down on what's going on in Hanover Park. And so the idea was, where appropriate, to emphasize the idea of local control, local zoning practices, local zoning authority, and so on. The other question was that of zoning districts. The number of zoning districts out there is almost as universal, or as numerous, if I might, as the number of land uses out there. So there's a lot of different zonings. So to try and create that consistent character, that was a challenge. So what we had to do, and I'll show you in a minute, was to create these groupings of common zoning. That's kind of maybe the most artful part of the code that's in front of you. Code enforcement, I mentioned, was something that that there was consensus that we needed. And then again, this idea of regulation, to set a common base standard, but beyond that, in most cases, to default to local control. And the other idea was the use of an intergovernmental agreement, which again, my colleagues at Ansel Glink are working on, which is kind of the formal agreement that the communities would enter into in terms of how the zoning would be dealt with. Again, you have all of this in your packet. I know there's a lot of it. If there are follow-up questions, if you read it later, you can certainly get to us through Shubhra. But it's got all the sections that a zoning code has, and just briefly to go through them, it's got a good intent purpose section, which all zoning ordinances have. Emphasis added here to highlight the things that I mentioned, right? Common zoning standards, consistent character, consistent code enforcement. That's the intent of the district. In terms of that administrative section, so again, in terms of notice, there was some question of, well, what happens if it's in one town, right? If in the corridor something's going to happen in Roselle, does there need to be formal notice? Is it going to require that a packet gets sent somewhere to Hanover Park and Bloomingdale in the county? What the steering committee landed on, and what we support, thinks a really good approach, is that there be communication. There's a lot of additional communication that's identified as part of this process, and that the group that met, the steering committee, would continue to meet as a corridor committee and meet on a quarterly basis, and that elected officials or maybe village administrators and county administration would get together every 6 months, just so everybody was up to date on what was going on, and that better communication was ultimately part of the process. In terms of land use controls, I won't go through each of them, but they'll be familiar to you because they are zoning standards. One of the questions that came up too was nonconformities. If a situation gets created where a use is not permitted that perhaps otherwise was previously, how would that be addressed? And again, that would fall under the local approach. This is the way we did the land use groupings, and I apologize, I'll give you all a headache if I go into detail on this, and feel free to read it in more detail. But the idea was to take the collection of each community in the county's residential districts and group those. Take everybody's business districts and group those. There's enough consistency in there and enough broadly defined categories of use to try and have a situation where most everybody's uses are the same. There might be some where it was a permitted use and now it's a special use. That was a point of discussion from the steering committee. The bottom line is everybody's trying to step up a little bit and change the way we do things just a little bit for the betterment of the entire corridor. So that's the way land use would be addressed. In terms of bulk standards, a couple of things to keep in mind. The single family that's out there is pretty much all in the R4 of the county. And so that's what the overlay adopts. In terms of more intensive residential townhomes or even apartments, it made sense to just adopt the local community's standard. Again, it's one of those local control issues. The employment-based bulk standards, the setback and height, we adopted your BP district because that's really what's out there, and that it's a very good district, and it works well for the kind of development that's there. Parking and loading, again, most communities are going to have a lot of these points in them, but the idea was to create something common so that when new development comes to one of the communities or the counties, that at the very least these items are in here, and you'll recognize these from most parking sections in zoning ordinances. Some of the things that are new that were not in everybody's code are about defining the design of the parking lot for pedestrian safety, emphasizing opportunities for visitor parking for residential, bicycle parking. Some of these things are best practices that not all of the codes had. Landscaping and buffering, again, the idea to create kind of a common standard. Landscaping, when you drive around communities, landscaping is something that you notice, and the idea of perimeter landscaping at parking lots and interior landscaping in parking lots is really a big standard because it really helps define the corridor. And so you'll see here again this mix of items that would be part of the overlay and items that would default to local jurisdictions. In terms of general provisions, this is in every zoning ordinance. This is sort of the other section. What else is there that needs to be addressed? And again, wanted to make sure that some of these items that relate very much to the character of the area, how it looks, that there was a common standard. So if the local community or the county has got a standard for this, that's great. That's what gets applied. If there's not, then there's this fallback in the overlay. Finally was the idea of signage. Along with landscaping, I would suggest to you that the thing that strikes you most as you drive down a corridor is what the signs look like. And so what we did was we took a look at what's out there and worked to set up a section that would amortize billboards, off-site advertising signs. We were specific in terms of wall signs such that the more modern wall signs were appropriate and that the cabinet signs, which are kind of I don't know, kind of as old as I am. It's sort of a thing from the 50s and the 60s. It's an older design sign, doesn't present as good a presentation. Those would be non-conforming. So if those change, they would have to become what's called pin-mounted signs with a more clean presentation. The thing that was kind of interesting and unique to the corridor is that little sign that you see down there in the corner is technically a pole sign, right? So we created this idea of this low-profile pole sign so that these signs that, again, technically from a definition in zoning, are pole signs, the same as the really tall signs that most communities are doing away with. But these are great. If you drive up and down the corridor, you see a bunch of these, and they're really nice. So we created this new definition to encourage this type of signage to remain.
What pole sign are you referring to?
Oh, I didn't have one particularly
okay.
in mind.
Okay.
And last but not least, in terms of the code, is definitions for those of us that administer zoning ordinances. The definition section is very important because it's how you know specifically whether or not a use is permitted or not permitted. And so as we get, now that we're close to the end, what we'll do is we'll start creating these careful definitions that will help administer this part of the code. In terms of next steps, over last month and this, we're visiting with yourselves. We were in Roselle earlier this month. We were at the county's development committee the beginning of last month. What month is it? It's June. We were in May 1st. We were at the county, and we'll be in Bloomingdale later this month. At that point, we're going to finish the draft, and it'll come back to you for your consideration. Whether or not it's adopted or adopted, just in talking to Shubra, understand that there may be a better way for Hanover Park to deal with this in terms of a resolution so that the actual adoption or implementation comes later, and that's certainly something that we think is logical and can be worked out. So, there you go. In just a few minutes, share a lot of work, and as I said, you've got the full body of the draft in your materials and also a summary memo. And there's no action being requested of you tonight. This is just to let you know where we are in the process. If you have specific questions about it tonight, I'm glad to answer them. If things come up later, please let Schuber know, and I'm glad to fill in any gaps. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Any questions from the board? Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you very
Mike.
much for the
Appreciate
chance to be with you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
It's the stretch of Lake Street.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. You can only take questions from the board at this
Sorry.
time. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Item number 5 on our agenda is the town hall session. Do we have anyone signed up?
Hank, Hank Romero first? Hank?
Now you can ask your question. No, well, yes.
Go ahead, Hank.
We can hear you.
Okay, the clerks, the office clerks here, I believe they're not in union. There should be a union and get paid as much as the cops and the utility people. And that's an idea. You know, it's always best to be represented by a lawyer instead of a union. But, you know, we got to work together on this. You know, why they're not union, everybody else is. Second item, property taxes. There should not be no property taxes on anybody, the rich or poor, because if you can't pay the taxes and that property is never yours, you're always paying taxes, so it never becomes your property. So just think, you know, I have this saying, live like a poor man, so when you become a poor man again, you'll be used to it. Not that I'm going to be a poor man, but the thing about it is, you know, when you're strong, you can pay the taxes, but, you know, after 30 years of paying for the house and you already paid the house off, the mortgage off, it's not your property because you still have to pay taxes. And then most people want to move out of town because they want to go to Tennessee where the property taxes are less. I wouldn't move to Tennessee because the property taxes are less. I pay the taxes here because it's like moving to a different country, not that it's got different laws. Have a good day.
Thank you, Hank.
Bob Hain?
Hello, good evening. My name is Bob Hain. I've lived in Hanover Park for 46 years. I was a special education supervisor in U46, working at Bartlett High School and Streamwood High School. I have been on the development committee. I've been to meetings here. I am invested in the proper development of Hanover Park. Some very small thing has occurred. I'm also the president of the Montero Homeowners Association for more years than I can count. Last week, some workers from Hanover Park pulled up to my neighbor's house and removed a boulder in the parkway that has been there for 46 years. I was there on the day that Jerry Brandis, who doesn't live there anymore, had it set there, and it cost him a couple $100. Well, the village came and picked it up and took it away. It was the homeowner's property. Where is the boulder now? Did they offer to put it on their property? No. Did they offer to give it to somebody else who could put it in, you know, like in our Montero Homeowners Association park? They didn't offer any of that. They just took it away. And they claim because you could get hurt in your car if you smashed into it. That same goes true for every tree that, you know, you guys have planted. And as I drove down Ontarioville today, there are big flower pots that I'm sure the village put there. that run the same or similar kind of risk. I don't think this is good action by what department, Public Works, I assume. I don't think this was a good move. I think that, I'd like to know where the rock is. It is in someone else's yard now who works for the village? I don't know that, but I'd like to know that. I think I should know that. The homeowner, who did not want to bother with this, has their aged 93-year-old grandmother who has dementia living in their house. They don't want to mess with anything, so they just backed up and said, well, whatever, take it. You don't take advantage of people that way either. Something should be done. That rock should be replaced, and I know that sounds so stupid and so insignificant, but that rock is more likely to save one of their 6 children from a car than a person driving the car getting injured by it. It's a side street. It's a cul-de-sac. No one goes fast. I made my point. I hope that someone can say or lead me in the right direction to get this ridiculous situation remediated.
Thank you, Bob. We have your contact information, and we'll have the appropriate person from the department. I don't know whether at this time it's the code enforcement or Public Works, but we will have someone contact you and give you some answers as to what happened and where that rock has been relocated to.
Thank you.
All right.
And believe me, I feel foolish standing here talking about a boulder.
No, no.
But it is a homeowners association. You know, we're trying always to build it up, make it look better. I was a pain in the butt to you guys some years ago when I pushed to get trees planted in our parkway, and you guys came up with 84 trees. And now I'm bothering the homeowners, make sure that they water them. But in the 46 years I lived here, we don't have mature trees in the parkway. So, you know, it's all the same thing. We have to keep making it better, not taking boulders away. All right, thank you all.
Duly noted. Thank you for your comments and for coming to our meeting tonight to express your concerns. We
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Have a good
And
day.
we'll have someone contact. We have your information.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, the village president's report. Since I am sitting in the absence of the village president, I will give my trustee report at this time, and we'll move on with the agenda. Let me begin by saying that we had a very outstanding Memorial Day event this past weekend. On Monday, it was very well attended. The comments from our speakers were very well stated, and I think it was just a tremendous testimony to our commemoration of those who gave their lives in the line of duty defending this nation of ours. So I was proud to be a part of that for the elected officials and the administration officials that were able to attend. I'm sure they all share my feelings about how wonderful that event was. Last night I had the pleasure of attending the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference at Cantigny in Wheaton, where the outgoing board was recognized. And I just want to say that in those comments that occurred during the evening, special note was given to our village manager, Juliana Mahler, for her leadership in the Stop KTTC, did I get those right? In the movement to stop the rail merger. She was given special recognition for outstanding leadership in that effort, and also our mayor, Rodney Craig, for his leadership in for that movement. It was a very wonderful event. The new board, and it was initiated and put in office. The mayor of Wheaton is now the president of the DuPage Managers and Mayor and Managers Conference, and it was a very well-attended event. After being on hiatus, I guess, for a few years because of COVID, it was nice to see everyone back together and to see a lot of our colleagues from the surrounding communities and to be in their company once again. So that was very much appreciated. There's one thing that I'd like to bring before the board. I know that on June 20th, we're doing the Warhol, is it the Warhol exhibit on June 20th?
27th.
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 In conjunction with that, I'd like to ask if the board would agree with me in recognizing June as Pride Month. Warhol was a very distinguished artist, but he was also a very proud gay man. And I think that as we are recognizing and celebrating his works, it would be a tremendous opportunity for us to name June Pride Month here in the village of Hanover Park and to offer a resolution at our next board meeting to commemorate Pride Month here in the village. Did you have a
I
comment?
think we, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we do a Pride Month resolution last year? Have we done it in the past?
A proclamation? Yeah. Well, I'd like to have one for this year.
Okay.
Yeah. To-
I guess what I'm saying is
We've done it.
there's a precedent.
That's precedent.
So, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great, to do that. And finally, on a personal note, I have a concern about the egress on Irving Park Road, just west of the Country Donuts. I think there's a safety issue with a tree that's growing on the curbside to the east of Countryside Donuts that blocks the view of cars exiting out of the donut shop, cars that are eastbound. It blocks the view. Once that tree blooms, you can't see the traffic coming from the west moving east, and I think that presents a safety concern, and I'd like, Chief, if maybe you could have someone go out and examine that and take a look at it and see if you agree that, you know, we need to look at doing something to mitigate that, that hazard that I think that tree presents sitting there on the, on our property lines there on Irving Park Road to, like I said, to mitigate that hazard. That concludes my report. Item number 7, moved by ominous vote to approve the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Village Clerk, would you call the roll?
And those are items 7A1 through 7A4.
Would you like me to read them aloud? Would you like me to read them aloud?
You have to ask the chair.
Yes, please read them aloud.
Alrighty. So reading the agenda items off the consent agenda as follows. 7A1, move to approve the payment to Tyler Technology for annual software maintenance and support in the amount of $109,541.94 and authorize the village manager to execute the necessary documents. 7A2, motion to accept the bid prices and award the contract for the 2023 new aerial fence program to Fence Connection, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $125,000 and authorize the village manager to execute the necessary documents. 7A3, motion to pass an ordinance authorizing the disposal of property owned by the Village of Hanover Park and authorize the village manager to execute the necessary documents. 7A4, motion to consent to the appointment of Mike Waits, Teresa Smith Waits, and Jim Kemper as regular members on the Sister Cities Committee for the term ending on April 30th, 2025. And that concludes the reading of the agenda items on the consent agenda. Alrighty. Trustee Gutierrez?
Yes.
Trustee Porter? Trustee Porter?
Yes.
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
Trustee Priegi?
Yes.
And Trustee Husani?
Yes.
785.
Item 785, move to pass an ordinance establishing a new Class L liquor license for tobacco dealers that may lawfully permit smoking within their premises.
So moved. Second.
And for discussion, I'd like to bring up a couple of concerns that I had that I believe have been received. Attorney Paul, can you explain that the ordinance as it is written, as I see it, says for tobacco dealers that may lawfully permit smoking. So is that identifying the class of tobacco dealers that can legally permit smoking? Is that what that is referring to?
It is, so
So
basically,
not all tobacco dealers can permit smoking, and this is for those that have the ability to
Right.
allow smoking,
which I understand is only one place in town.
which is only one place in town.
Correct.
Okay, correct. Secondly, I had some questions about the hours of operation. Can you give us an explanation as to the hours of operation as they are
Set forth.
set forth in this ordinance?
Right, so they're in section 5 of the ordinance, which is page 51 of your agenda. And they basically say that, it's in this little F, it says, "No person holding a Class L license shall have any alcoholic liquor upon or within its premises other than customers' alcoholic liquor stored and locked in the customer's locked storage locker between these hours, 12 midnight and 8 in the morning, Sunday through Saturday, and 12 midnight to 9 a.m. Sunday, except when there's the new year, and then they can basically close at 1, or not operate at 1 a.m. So what this is basically saying is, these are the hours that are listed that you cannot have any liquor on the premises that's not in the lockers.
Now, from 12 midnight to 8 a.m. are the prohibited hours, is that correct?
That's correct.
But does that also suggest that the business can be open during those hours for smoking? I mean, I think we have restrictions on hours of operation for almost all businesses in Hanover Park. So
Right.
this speaks to the consumption or the possession of alcohol. But
Right.
what about simply the business being open for business during those hours, which basically makes that a 24-hour business if we look at it like that with those hours?
Right.
Which I'm kind of concerned with since we don't have any 24-hour businesses in town.
Right, so I don't really know how they plan on operating, but I had heard that they wanted to have, I think, this particular establishment, some ability to have people come in. But under this ordinance, I believe that in order to have anyone come in, they would have to have a manager on site anyway. So.
It doesn't state that because I think it states that it needs a Bassett train, so that suggests alcohol. So in the absence of alcohol, would they need to have a Bassett trained person on site if there's no alcohol being consumed?
So in little c on section 6, it
Okay.
says every licensee shall provide a manager on duty at the licensed premises during all hours of operations.
Mm-hmm.
So this ordinance would require that there be a manager there at 3 o'clock in the morning if somebody wanted to come in and be there at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at their website, and they're open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. each day.
Right,
is
they're
what-
open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. This ordinance would allow them to have this liquor from,
Up until 12.
starting at 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight, Sunday through Saturday. So the hours that they post currently do not coincide with the hours that would be in this ordinance. I think that they desire to have more hours for the purpose of this ordinance than the hours that are listed in their own business that they currently operate. Because I originally drafted this with different hours, and then I was told that they were going to have more hours to be open.
I'll save my future other comments. Anyone else have anything they want to add?
So, yeah, Juliana, you said you were looking at the business's website.
Correct.
So the memo doesn't have the name of the business. Was that intentional?
I think because, so this, as Bernie mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, we only currently have one business in town, Rocky Patel, that would meet the the guidelines of this. But that being said, if another business were to open up in town that met these requirements, this would apply to that business as well. So right now, we only have one with the hours that are stated, but it sounds like there was a discussion about alternative hours. And then, but if the board approves this ordinance and then proceeds to approve a license, just similar to liquor licenses where you each approve each one, then these would apply to that business as well.
So just on that issue, the board, the village board, doesn't really approve the issuance of a liquor license.
That's the commission, the liquor
The
commission.
liquor commissioner does that.
Yes.
So there would not be an occasion where something would come to the village board to approve the granting of a liquor license to a particular applicant. What does the board do? The board is the legislative body, and the board sets forth the criteria for issuing a liquor license, and they do that in their ordinances. And so what has happened in the past, and there's another factor to it also. The other factor is that we have a liquor ordinance that specifies the number of liquor licenses that are available in each category. There's a number of categories for liquor licenses. That ordinance goes on further to state that whenever a licensee relinquishes his license, or if his license is revoked, or he doesn't renew it, that number drops automatically by that number. So the situation here is in Hanover Park, because you have this system, that anytime a liquor license is either unavailable because it's met the maximum number of licenses, or a license has dropped down, anytime a new person wants a liquor license, they have to come back to the village board to increase the number of the licenses. As to who gets the license, that's the mayor. He decides who gets the license.
Thank you. So just to clarify, they had a license for tobacco, but now they want one for liquor as well.
So my understanding
A
is,
special license.
yeah.
For
What
liquor,
makes it special?
For BYOB. It's
Oh.
only for BYOB usage.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
So-
question.
And maybe,
So
I think it
have
would
a
be-
question. You stated that we have restrictions on hours of operations for other
We do.
places for liquor?
Yeah.
Are they similar to this, where there's no liquor between 12 and 8 a.m., Sunday through Saturday, and 12 to midnight?
They're similar as to that type of language, but the hours are different. They're not all the same hours. So different places have, different classifications of licenses have different hours. So for instance, if you looked at what this is amending, which is 1018, section 1018, you would see a whole listing of different classes of licenses
Okay.
and the hours that each one has. There are some that have similar hours combined, but
I have,
Let me just
Yeah.
give you a point of clarification as to what's happening. So this particular business, members, patrons who purchase memberships get a key card. And the key card allows them private entry into the business, which they can access a special lounge that's been set up where they can smoke cigars and consume alcohol. And they have a special key card, which they can enter from the outside of the premises and enter into the business. So the concern that I'm raising is that if you have unfettered access to the lounge via the key card, a person may decide that at 4 o'clock in the morning, a group of friends want to go play poker, and so they go and they use their key card, they enter into the premise. Maybe they don't drink any alcohol, maybe they don't, but once they enter, there's no way for our law enforcement to ascertain whether there's any Bassett-trained manager on site. They can enter, and there's no supervision of that. So, but let's say they're good guys, and I know the owner, and he has good intentions. So let's say they enter and they just want to play a game of poker, and smoke their cigars at 4 o'clock in the morning. Where else in Hannibal Park can you go and enter into a business at 4 o'clock in the morning and conduct any kind of operation, any kind of activity, and do that? If we have within the village, and this is my concern, if we have within the village set hours of operation where the local restaurant has to close, they're closed at midnight or whatever it is, and the local bars that are in town, they have closing hours. You can't just decide you want to go to the bar and play darts, maybe not drink, but play darts or do anything at any time of the day. They have set hours of operation. What I'm suggesting that the language in this ordinance is vague, and I think that it needs to be specific as to the hours of operation, that says that if we grant this business to have this special Class L liquor license, they shall operate between the hours of 9 a.m. and whatever the board decides, 9 a.m. and 10 o'clock, or 9 a.m. and 11 o'clock, but 11 p.m., but it needs to be specific as to the hours of operation. And I think the way this ordinance is written is vague, and it allows a gray area where people can access, and once they're in, we have no control over the activities that take place.
So now, how I understand this is, so this is something new, license that we're going to be creating an ordinance around it. So this business that's asking for this will ask for that license special request, and that will go where? To the liquor licensing?
To the liquor commission.
Liquor
So-
commission it goes to. And then there, we can decide the hours and everything else, whatever comes within the boundary
No,
of this
no.
ordinance.
So I'll repeat what I said before.
Yeah.
The village board establishes the license, an L license. They establish all the parameters by legislation. This would be a legislation. And based on what you do here, the liquor commissioner can grant a liquor license, but he has to follow whatever
What's in here.
you've done. So it isn't, I think it's a question of, it isn't that he can do something and then he comes back and you set hours. You do that now, or
And-
when you create the license.
And for clarification, the way it was put on the agenda, the request came in. And so tonight is for the board to determine whether they want to create this type of license. If you notice in the ordinance, it has a 0 on page, it has a 0 licenses on page 51. If the board decides that they want to approve this as presented or amended, then at a future meeting, there has to be an item on the agenda that would create an actual license in this category to be
Not create a
available to a
license,
business.
I don't agree with that. You create a number,
Oh,
that's all.
a number of licenses, not a license
Yeah.
to a particular business, but a license available to be granted by the liquor commissioner. So I think that this is not the only step the board needs to take, but it is an important one for you to decide what the parameters and guidelines are.
This is
If,
the primary, it's more than important. This is the primary step, because this sets forth all the parameters of the license. So I think that's important for the board to understand, that this is their chance if they.
Bernie,
want
can you
to.
speak into the microphone, please?
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Just start here, thank you.
Sorry.
and I would say staff does not have a recommendation on this. This is being brought forth by the business's request, and we've had a lot of discussion, but you need to decide, I think, what you're
Yes.
comfortable with.
Have we had other establishments have BYOB requests?
This is the first.
This is the first
This
I've
is the
seen.
first.
Yeah.
We,
That's why we're creating a special Class L license for this particular use.
Is it-
well,
is it
so
common
we've had discussions when we've talked about different classes of liquor license, whether there should be a BYOB, like a corkage, with a corkage fee or something like that. We've not recommended that because with that is less food, and we receive food and beverage revenue from restaurants, and we have control through the liquor license at a type, depending on which business and what they are granted through that process. So we have not recommended a BYOB for other businesses.
Okay, thank you. Would just like to say to the board, based off of some of the concerns that trustee Porter has raised, maybe also based off of the fact that I don't believe the business owner is here tonight, which would be helpful to maybe ask him or ask that person questions.
I do have the business owner's proposal in the clerk's office that I'm happy to send to the board if you want to see.
Okay.
So before we make licenses, we ask them for a full proposal of what their intentions are, what their space looks like, and I'm happy to provide that to you guys so you can see his full intent, if you like.
Maybe we-
I would like to, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, maybe we continue this discussion
Yes.
at a later date.
I would like to recommend that we send this ordinance back for consideration, that consider this a first reading, that we send this back and that we include language specific to the hours of operation.
Yes.
I think it's important, since this is precedent setting, and I think we need to be very careful as how we move forward. And so I think that, let's send this back, and let's rewrite it with specific hours of operation for this and any other business that may come forward for this Class L license. Now, I don't know that, are they subject to the standing village ordinance for hours of operation? Do we have a standing village ordinance that set hours of operations for any business in town?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Does anyone know the answer to that? I don't.
I didn't think so.
I don't think we do.
But because of the uniqueness of the access granted to members where they can get into the property 24/7, I think then we need to have a unique approach.
Yes.
And set hours of operation for this business. So I would like to recommend that we send it back, have that provision included in any other recommendations from the board, but I would certainly like to see that provision included, and then let's bring it back for discussion at the dais.
So I would ask a couple of questions, or at least one. I think there's maybe kind of like two parts to what you're
Okay.
asking. So the first part might be, do you want a provision that the place must be closed between certain hours?
I think that's what we're asking.
Is that, I mean, I don't know. Is that what you're asking? And then the
That
next.
that it sets a time definite as to the opening of the business and the closing of the business.
Okay.
Set a time definite.
And then the other question is, are these hours okay?
What hours?
For the ones that are in here?
Being open from 8 to midnight.
What are you, if they are, that's okay. If they're not, then
But don't they close at
That-
10?
So the closing time would be midnight. So we would give them operation, and they'd have to close at midnight according to the hours in this ordinance.
right, and then they would be able to, okay.
And then open at 8 a.m., at 9 a.m,
On Sunday.
I'll leave, what is the will of the board on that? Do you think that, you
What
know,
are their hours right now?
Well, 10,
The manager indicated.
10 till, 10 till,
But they have, it's not, our understanding is while this business is open from 9 AM to 10 PM.
so as
that
of right
they-
now, do they have these
They have
exclusive
access.
members that can go in
Yes,
after 10?
that's my understanding,
They do.
yes.
So then we're going to be changing their hours of operations beyond just the alcohol now.
Well,
Because
they would
right now,
have to have
that's
somebody
indoor.
on,
they would have to
on,
go to premise though,
yes.
the entire time.
That's what they're
Site.
discussing.
So does the owner or owners have, see, this is what I like to know, this was what my question is. It says that, you know, they'll be locked and put away during a certain time, but if I was a member of that club,
you would have access?
what's stopping me from getting it, right?
Nothing would stop you.
Or is there? Do we know this
No,
for sure?
they're private lockers that are rented
By the
by
person,
the
so they
members.
have their own key.
So they have their own key.
Got it.
Open area.
Yeah.
But access, I'm guessing, I'm not a technical person, but I'm guessing that they can restrict access on this keypad between certain hours.
That's what I'm thinking, that if they still continue with the,
We can ask.
I don't know who wants to go at 4 in the morning to smoke and whatever, but, they're doing that right now, right?
No.
So right now,
I don't know, Chief?
I'm
do you know?
confused. Are club
Maybe.
members allowed to go in with their special keypad at 4 in the morning?
We're aware that right now, members can get in anytime, whether the facility's actually, the business is open or not. They're able to go in and use the lounge at their will.
So whether there's a Bassett trained person there or not, they're gonna be able to get in there, right?
Right, and they know they're not supposed to be allowing alcohol to be consumed there. You know, is it occurring? I can't say for sure either way, but they know they're not supposed to.
So there, I see a third issue too then. So a third issue is, do you want the place to be open to the public, unlocked door, during the hours that liquor is available?
Bernie, we can't hear you.
Do you want, so one of the issues is, I mean, if this is the big concern about people coming in, do you want to allow alcoholic liquor during hours where the public cannot enter the premises or not? I guess that would
Well,
be a
I
question.
mean, we have other businesses that are open past midnight, but the,
I'm not
pl-
talking
I-
about being open past midnight, I'm
No.
talking being open where the public is not allowed, not being open, being closed, and the public cannot come in, but other people can.
I guess what I'm saying is, we have other businesses that are open past midnight, but we know what time people are allowed, so the police department knows that no one should be in there after a certain hour, whether it's midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. They know that at 3 o'clock in the morning, no one should be there. If they see activity in there, then it's not appropriate. I think so. The expectation of what's allowed there and when people should be in that building having this activity go on would be helpful.
Yeah.
But what those hours are, I think, is the
So
decision
are
of
you
the
saying
board.
that it's,
This area is restricted.
I guess
This area is restricted where this is all taking place. The general public
It's a
can't
private
access,
room.
can't
It's a
access
private
the
room.
lounge.
Right, I think there's
Private.
two sections. One,
Yeah.
where the general public can come in and
okay.
Yeah.
purchase,
And then
right?
there's a restricted room.
And then there's a restricted member-only section.
And that's the room that they have unfettered access.
But I
to,
don't know. I've
is
not
the
been
members
in there.
only. I've been there to see the operation.
Just the lounge.
So it's the lounge, yeah. They have unfettered access with the member card as it stands now, 24/7.
But maybe you ought to concentrate on what you want to do as opposed to what they're currently doing, unless you want to let them do what they're currently doing.
No, I think we're going to focus on what we want to do and what we want.
So then there are some issues, and you can say to me, go back and redraft it, but without knowing what to put in it, I have no idea of what you want redrafted, and you might just as well redraft it yourself,
What's
because
the-
I don't know.
Yeah, what's the hours, and let's say our bars, I think, would be the businesses that are open the latest.
Right.
What is the latest hour of operation for any of our bars in town?
Right,
2 a.m.
There you go.
2 a.m. Then I think we ought to be consistent
Right.
with what we are already doing in town.
First of all, I disagree with, maybe the bars are allowed to be open till 2 a.m., but there's other establishments that serve alcoholic liquor that are not. So when you talk about being consistent, it's all over the place on the hours of different places.
I think the question was, what was the latest?
What is the?
Oh, what is the latest?
Yes, what is the latest?
Oh, so are you saying that this should be the latest?
I think I would not have a problem with them being in line with whatever we do for the latest at 2 a.m. because I think that it gives, I think it gives some ability to our police department to also monitor the business because, you know, if a place can be open at any time and the police is cruising by, they don't know if there's a burglary going on or some other type of activity that could be happening if there are lights on at a place at all hours of the night. They know at a bar after 2 o'clock, if there are lights on, if there's something going on, there's people there that shouldn't be there. And then they can go in and investigate and make sure that everything's okay. I would hate to have the police not be able to determine whether people are in there legally or not, or, you know, because of that. So my recommendation, we can have a discussion on the board and we can ask them to send it back, is to adhere to the 2 a.m. Closing time for the business.
So with the attendant, that's what you're saying?
With a Bassett trained attendant on site.
With
Yeah,
Bass, yeah.
because that's what's different here. A bar could have an attendant there, they should have an attendant there, of course. But that's what's different here. They're trying to kind of leave it unattended and, you know,
Right.
members access it after
Well,
hours.
this ordinance
So-
provides that they have to have a manager
Okay.
there, and that manager would have to be Bassett trained.
Which they are.
And,
So,
and
so
with
that
that, they
is
could
not
be
an
open
issue.
up till
That is
2
not
a.m.
an issue
Okay.
in this ordinance.
Yeah.
The issues are the times that you are going to allow them to
Okay.
be open and closed.
I agree with 2 p.m., 2 a.m.
So I think there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of questions, a lot of missing information. So is there a way that this could be removed? And just-
Well, it's a first reading.
The first reading.
It's a first reading, so we're not gonna.
Wait,
It says for approval.
No.
It'll be voted on the next board meeting.
So I think, Bernie, can you explain how the board, we don't really have like first reading. You would remove it or you would table it, or what's the action the board needs to do to have further discussion at a next
So
meeting?
I think that there's a couple things. One, I believe there's a motion to pass this ordinance, and I believe there's a second.
There is.
So that means it's on the floor. A vote should be taken as soon as discussion is ended. That's the process. If you don't want to follow that process, then the person who made the motion can withdraw their motion, the second can withdraw their second. And then it's back on the beginning part. And then the board can either remove it from the agenda, they can table it. They can't table it because it's not, there's no motion to pass. They could remove it from the agenda and you could bring it back to the next agenda. Or since there is a motion and a second, they could just table it to another date.
To a date certain?
Yeah. But quite frankly, I think.
Move that, we table it.
Yeah, but I think that there's, I mean, have you answered all of your questions
Is there any
about how
other
you want this
discussion that needs to go
ordinance
down?
drafted?
Bernie, do you have any more questions?
Well, I think I'd like to maybe have a larger
I've asked my
conversation.
questions. I don't think that the board wants to deal with them.
It would be helpful to maybe have a larger conversation about the pros and cons of moving towards BYOB. I think this is a very unique situation, but I think maybe a larger discussion needs to take place. So I do believe that a discussion needs to take place. That's all I have.
I'd like to work on the times on this, and then move that we take a second look at it after the times have been changed on the proposed ordinance.
Then-
And I'm sorry, at the same time, I like to see I'd like to hear, well, you've got the information, Christie, you'll send us more about the
send you the
plans.
proposal that
That's, the proposal is important.
Yeah, you can see his intention.
Then the chair would like to entertain, if the person, the trustee that made the motion and second would recall their motion and the second.
Move to, remove.
Okay, we have a motion to remove the motion and
Who did
remove the second.
Kunkel?
And, you don't need a motion, they just have to say that
Okay.
I withdraw my
Okay,
motion.
they withdraw. Okay, the motions have been withdrawn,
The motion and the second.
Yes.
and this item is tabled for future consideration at times uncertain at this point.
It should be in the next board meeting, and I think timing is what I want. And
Okay, do we want to do it at the next board meeting?
Yeah, I want to see them in the next board meeting with the time change to 2 o'clock. I
Okay.
agree with you.
Then we'll have this added to the agenda for the next board meeting.
Yeah.
But is that gonna, are we gonna have a discussion before then? Because what they're asking for is something that's completely new, something we've never done before, and I think it
Yeah,
opens up.
so I don't know what you mean discussion, like, do you want a workshop, or what is, we can't just leave it, if there's a business in town that's trying to do business, and we can't just.
I
put it off.
understand that, but they are asking for something that,
Yeah.
there's no
So-
precedent,
So let's have that discussion at the next meeting. Now that you've been informed, you'll
Yeah.
have the proposal,
You wanna look
you'll
into
have it
it.
all, and then we can have a full discussion on it at the next meeting.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one way to do it, but I think that before we put it back on the agenda, there's certain things that need to be cleared up.
and that's what
So
I'm
I
trying to,
can't-
is there any proposal that you're putting forward that what needs to be cleared and how? Like, is there anything that you're
We
recommending?
just went through an entire discussion about
Yeah.
the missing information, the differences in the time, the
So,
ambiguity with
After
the
discussion,
ordinance,
this is
so-
what we're deciding to do, like, next board meeting, we're gonna bring this up, but these are the changes that we want, adhere
Right,
to.
but I can't make a decision if
Well,
the
that's-
information
that's
isn't
her
in front of me,
decision, that's
right?
what trustee Bancoli's decision, but that's what mine is, and that's what other trustees. Let's take a majority here as to what we want to do next board meeting.
So the only change that's gonna be made is
Okay.
this 2 AM? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, no, that's
Yeah.
not correct,
that's,
right?
For me-
That's what I'm trying to say.
so for me, it's correct, though, so that's what everybody, we're just taking a vote as to who the majority is here.
That's the only change in the ordinance. If
So the
we're
majority
debating,
is that.
if we're debating the efficacy of the ordinance in general and whether there should be a BYOB, that's a completely different discussion.
Yeah.
But as it relates to the agenda item that's before us, the only change that we're offering here is in the hours of operation.
That's right,
To be-
and I would be okay with that,
to be
that's what I'm
specific
saying,
as to
and
time.
every trustee have their vote as to what they want to do.
Now, if there are members that are objectionable to or have questions about, whether we should even have a BYOB, that's a different discussion altogether.
That needs to be brought up with the liquor commissioners to them from the trustee. The liquor
That goes
commission
under
is
liquor?
establishing the license. We're just voting tonight. Or we're voting next week, or 2 weeks. So it really, you would have to bring it before the liquor commission. You'd have to ask for a special liquor commission hearing about this, if you have concerns about BYOB in the village. Because liquor commission first approves it before it becomes part of our agenda here. Once it becomes a part of our agenda, it's out of the liquor commission's hands. So what you're asking for is, you want something that is liquor commission responsibility, not our responsibility. It's a liquor commission responsibility.
I don't think that's true. I think that the liquor commissioner or commission, their authority is to review an application for a liquor license and to decide whether to grant that liquor license or not grant that liquor license. The village board is the one that passes the legislation concerning the parameters of the liquor license. So I don't think that is correct. The board could send it to a committee of any sort, including the liquor commission, I suppose, to have them look at it, or whatever. But the responsibility for the actual ordinance lies with the village board, and how they arrive at having that done is their decision.
The village manager has something to say.
Can I ask for clarification, trustee Bancole? Are you asking to have a conversation, and I'm just referring to the BYOB, whether BYOB should, this ordinance just pertains to BYOB related to tobacco, people with tobacco, businesses with a tobacco license? Are you asking to have a broader conversation about BYOB in general across all of the licenses?
I would say, yes, the second one, because this is the first example of this type of license that's become before us. I don't think we had a formal discussion about this, to my knowledge. Maybe the Liquor Commission did, I'm not 100% sure. But if we are going to be introducing a new type of license, right, I would like to know the pros, the cons, before we just issue something to a business that's never been done before. So I think we've now spent time talking about the things that are not so clear in this ordinance, precedent, the lack of precedent, all of that information. I guess there's a proposal that was submitted. All of that information would be helpful so that ultimately when this does come before us, that we could all make informed decisions. So if that happens in 2 weeks for the next board meeting, sure. But I don't think that, you know, it's incumbent of us to make decisions when there's all sorts of information that's missing.
For me, I have to say that, like, the 2 a.m. is fine. What I'm interested in is the proposal. Like, I don't smoke, so I don't know that they have these things locked. I've never been in there. So to have all that information beforehand would have been good. And I also want to know, by us telling this owner or owners, we're limiting you till 2, will that affect, maybe these owners know that things get really awesome at 4 and everybody's smoking at 4 in the morning, I don't know. So are we affecting, don't laugh, Syed, are we affecting them financially then by saying 2? Or does this owner have a way to say, we've locked that stuff up and not even the members can get it? They can't get at the alcohol even though they're coming in at 4 in the morning. So all those are my questions. But for me, a 2 a.m. cutoff would be fine. And then also to note that if we do bring this up in 2 weeks, we can still discuss it. We don't have to, you know, we still have that option to ask all those questions.
And Chief Johnson, I think you've indicated that those cards can be deactivated during certain times so that there's not unlimited access.
They should be able to. Yeah, if it's just what I believe it to be is a regular door access system, that parameters can be put on that would deactivate the cards between set hours.
Okay, great. Then I'd like.
I'd also ask, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'd also ask if the business owner is able to come by, and when we next talk about this, there were so many questions that I think could have been answered had the person been.
I'm sure the business owner would be very willing to stop by and to discuss with us. I don't think he'd have a problem with that. So I'd like to entertain a motion that we bring this back up for further discussion in 2 weeks at our next board meeting. And we will forestall the rewriting of the ordinance until we have addressed all of the issues and concerns that have been raised tonight. And then we will submit an ordinance, a proposal or proposed ordinance to be voted on by the board.
I second that.
Can you clarify? So,
He made a motion, you made a motion.
I mean, she's second. So can we call the roll, please?
I don't understand.
Trustee Porter?
Yes.
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
Trustee Prigi?
Yes.
Trustee Husani?
Yes.
And Trustee Gutierrez.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 7A6, move to approve warrant 6/1/2023 in the amount of $450,254.10.
So moved.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
Trustee Prigi?
Yes.
Trustee Husani?
Yes.
Trustee Gutierrez?
Yes.
And Trustee Porter.
Yes. Item 7A8, move to approve April 2023. Item 7A7, move to approve warrant paid in advance 5/12/2023 to 5/25/2023 in the amount of $1,066,020.24.
So moved.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
Trustee Brigi?
Yes.
Trustee Husani?
Yes.
Trustee Gutierrez?
Yes.
Trustee Porter?
Yes.
And Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Item 7A8, move to approve April 2023 P cards in the amount of $28,033.
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Brigi?
Yes.
Trustee Husani?
Yes.
Trustee Gutierrez?
Yes.
Trustee Porter?
Yes.
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
And Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
Item number 8 on the agenda, the village manager's report.
No report.
No report. Item 9, village clerk's report.
Just really quickly, our summer events are starting to kick off with the apiary event coming up this weekend, and then the Touch a Truck event on June 10th from 9 to noon. We do have quiet hours from 9 to 10, so come, enjoy, and have fun.
Thank you. Corporation Council's report.
No report, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Village trustees report, Bob Priggy.
No report.
Trustee Husseini.
So there was ICSC convention in Las Vegas. I was able to attend a couple of weeks ago. And 4 days of hard labor. I mean, back-to-back meetings. We landed at 10:30, and 11 o'clock there was a meeting. And developer after developer, one after another, meeting with them. I learned a lot with this. There was a way of having a communication with these developers that Shubra really owns it, and Mayor really owns it, and learned a lot throughout the trip. There were conversations that I have turned to see that conversation turning actually within is one is like, oh, disengaged when we start, and then Shubra goes and makes that pitch, and it's like, oh, what does Hanover Park has to offer? You know, like all of a sudden conversation changes and people get interested and hearing more as to what Hanover Park has to offer. So that was really neat to see that if we are prepared and know our material as to what we are offering, there is a lot that we can do. And there was really meeting after meeting. I mean, from starting that day to the third day at 4 o'clock, literally, they were removing the carpets and the glue was sticking out our shoes, and that's how late we stayed there in the convention center. And this was a big convention center. It is just walking from one end to another. It's like 2 miles. I'm exaggerating it maybe, but it's like McCormick Place. You're just walking. And so on Monday, it was 15,000 square steps that I have taken just in convention. It was quite a bit. But with that, a lot of learning as well, and making sure Hanover Park is heard out there. So great job. I think it's a very, very successful trip as to making sure we put our name out there. With that, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee Gutierrez.
Yes. Today, I had the pleasure of attending Fiesta del Sol, which was a Hanover Township fundraiser. With the cost of living increases or demands due to inflation, the Astor Avenue Food Pantry is seeing unprecedented numbers, so much so that sometimes the cupboard is bare. So this was very much needed fundraiser, and it was wonderful to see my fellow trustee Yasmin Bancole join me there, as well as other elected officials from the area. I know that we have looked at our numbers and how much we're setting aside to give to Hanover Township, and I think we need to take a second look at this, because with inflation, there's not enough. There's not enough food in those shelves. And so we might have to take a second look at our spending there for our townships. A lot of our Hanover Park folk go there for food. A lot of our elderly folk depend on it, so. Just want to remind everybody that on June 20th, we have resources and refreshments. We are lovely enough that we have 4 townships that want to be part of Hanover Park, and they're all going to be here, giving information on their services, especially for differently abled folks. I wanted just to say thank you to everybody that participated in the MLK Build-Up Day. It was a great success. We had pretty good numbers. I think we had excellent numbers, actually, right? It was the bestest that we've had. So thank you so much, Barry. For that, I want to take a special time to thank Zach and Fred Crespo, who donated the shirts, and it was very obvious they were Fred Crespo's shirts because they had his logo in the back rather large, but they were free, so that was wonderful. I attended the United Against Hate Coalition as well, and it's something that I like to bring here. It's a Cook County effort where places of worship or town halls, wherever you want this to take place, is you invite all the community to come together and to get information about, look at how Asian crime, crime against Asian has risen. Crime against Latinos rose by 8.9% since last year, and so hate crime specifically. And it's about coming together to fight hate against any special groups, and it was well attended. Representative Canty was there, and Commissioner Britton as well. Also went to a Kinneyville presentation. It's been a very busy May for me. Went to a Kinneyville presentation. They are still, they've already started to enroll folks, the kids, because there are a number of Venezuelans coming in who are coming in just recently, very recently. More asylum seekers continue to increase, and they are settling here in Hanover Park. The Historic Committee met.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? I saw that Chicago recently approved $51 million to assist the asylum seekers that are going to the city of Chicago.
Right.
What should the response be from the village of Hanover Park be to, in your opinion, since you're kind of our resident expert on the subject, in terms of supporting the asylum seekers, as you've just given evidence to, that are coming into our community?
Right. There's a new deputy mayor of immigration. So the new mayor of Chicago has appointed different deputy mayors. This deputy mayor of immigration I met with yesterday. Her name's Ray, and they're looking at how to allocate funding so that they can do it equitably, because we have immigrants that have been here 10, 20 years before not getting services and not privy to the services, to helping the ones that are here get established. So one of the issues that they have is that they've decided that instead of going into hotel shelters like we did, where I spent almost 9 months of my life in, they're going to do 30-day shelters in Chicagoland area. They're looking at like Wilbur Wright College as a shelter. They are looking at giving the 70% of immigrants first come to Chicago but settle outside of Chicago, and I'm looking at northwest suburbs. They're looking at shelter space in our area. Now, we're landlocked, but we're looking at factories that are not being used, warehouses that are not being used to become temporary shelters. Right now, we have 4,000 people in shelters across Chicago, and they're packed. And as of yesterday, we had 600 plus waiting in the police stations, because they have to arrive first to a police station to get a special number, so that when they get called, they can now have a space for 30 days at a shelter. So the city of Chicago is looking for spaces outside of Chicago, so that maybe we're a small landlocked town, but what do our neighbors have and what they can offer? And when we do social services out here, we do it right. And especially when you look at Hanover Township, Schaumburg Township, Palatine, we do it right. And so what Chicago is going to be looking at, and is looking at the townships. They're going to be looking at the townships to say, what space do you have that you can do a temporary 30-day shelter? With that in mind, however, know that because of how the eviction started again after COVID, we have a huge leap in houseless people. And so now we're going to have even more. if you think about it. So they haven't decided how they're gonna use the 51, but as soon as I get that information, I'll be more than glad to share it. I think what we need to do is support our townships, and that's why, this is why Hanover Township, at times, you know, the cupboard is bare. And so we need, and that's why when we look at how we were giving money, how we allocate monies to nonprofits, we need to look at Hanover Township Food Pantry and the Schaumburg Township Food Pantry.
How many of those Venezuelan asylum seekers or migrants are actually settled in the Hanover Park area?
I have no
Do you have an
idea.
idea?
I have no idea, and here's why, and then our police department could attest to this. We have an overcrowding issue in some places. They're also a transient community.
Okay.
So they might get a start here, but then move on. And so we've become that stepping stone for them. Forget Chicago, they come here, and that's a stepping stone, so.
You keep us posted.
I can tell you that,
What we
yes.
can do to aid that effort.
I can tell you that between May and October of last year, we had over 400 new families of Venezuelans come through our nonprofit centers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. The Historic Committee is going to be putting up a plaque at the parsonage and at the church. Do you guys know that that church was moved from another street here? So we're looking at putting that as a historic place. And I think we're looking at sometime in June to set that up. And once we have a date, we'll invite the board. We are, the Hysterical Committee, as they call themselves, the Historic Committee, is looking at finding information about the Anna Merrick Rose Mosaic window. And thank you, Dave, because I just sent him this 6 hours ago, and in a few minutes it was up on Facebook, or if it was Dave, right? Yeah. We're looking for information on the Anna Merrick Rose window. The window was rescued from the property. We believe that a Hanover Park resident created it. We found the rose. It's absolutely beautiful. We're going to be investing money in getting it fixed. We like to know more about its history. So if there's anybody out there that knows about the Anna Merrick Rose, please let us know. And then finally, June is also Immigrant Heritage Month. So this is the 10th year that we're celebrating Immigrant Heritage Month in June, and as well as Puerto Rican Pride Month. So to my fellow Boricuas out there, Wepa. That's all.
Thank you, trustee. Trustee Kunkel?
No, the only thing I have to add is the Memorial Day event was very, very popular. The residents all talked loudly about it. Voiced their opinion, thought it was real great. Flags looked good. We had people honking their horns when they're driving by. So I want to thank the staff for everything they did for putting it on. And thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Trustee Bancole?
Thank you. As Trustee Gutierrez mentioned, I also attended the Fiesta del Sol fundraiser event put on by Hanover Township. And I agree, Trustee Gutierrez, there's always more that can be done to support the townships. So looking forward to that future conversation. I continue to sit on the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, the Legislative Committee, and I understand information was shared about the different pieces of legislation that were passed through the Illinois General Assembly. You know, the mayor isn't here tonight, but one of his favorite topics to touch on is the local government distributive fund. Many of you might have seen that there was a very small increase to the percentage that allocates funds to municipalities. So that percentage increase will the total of that percentage increase comes to $112 million for the entire state of Illinois. And if you break that down, it really comes to $8.78 per resident. So if you times $8.78 times our population, that should be the approximate amount that we will get in funding from the state because of that increase. Recently, I attended a symposium on the future of the electric vehicle industry in Illinois. I'm very excited that we have EV charging in the village right by Discount Tire. I don't own an EV vehicle, so I yet to use it, but it's one step in the right direction, and I know that we are, down the line, we will have other conversations about where other placement locations may be. And last but not least, did just want to remind everyone that the Environmental Committee is putting on its annual apiary event this Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. It's always a great time for the kids, and you get to learn about bees. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee. Without that, without any further comments, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded for adjourn. Bill, please take the roll.
Trustee Husani?
Yes.
Trustee Gutierrez?
Yes.
Trustee Porter?
Yes,
Trustee Kunkel?
Yes.
Trustee Bancole?
Yes.
And Trustee Brady?
Yes.
we stand adjourned.
31.